Going into the 2022 offseason, it was expected by many that the Utah Jazz, after multiple seasons of failed playoff runs, despite being one of the better teams in the league during the regular season, that they were going to blow up their roster and start fresh with a rebuild, especially considering Danny Ainge was now running the show in the front office, and especially after head coach Quinn Snyder stepped down right before heading into the season. Of course, Utah Jazz's most likely trade candidates with the highest trade value at that time were Rudy Gobert and Donovan Mitchell, but despite Donovan Mitchell clearly being the better player between the two, there seemed to be much more interest from teams in the services of Rudy Gobert as one of the best defensive players in the league. But we were all shocked to learn the kind of haul that the Jazz were able to get for Rudy Gobert when they traded him to the Minnesota Timberwolves shortly after the start of free agency. The Timberwolves made an all-in move to take them to the next level, and thus far, this experiment of adding Rudy Gobert to their roster and mortgaging their future has not at all paid off, and it's hard to see how even with Rudy Gobert, the Wolves will ever be viewed as a title contender. If you're new to the channel and you enjoy the content, consider subscribing, as this is a newly created channel. It's not even 2 months in, and I would very much appreciate your support in helping the channel grow, and in return, I'll be providing more NBA content like this all season long. Now, I think it's important to remember a little context leading up to the Rudy Gobert trade, because while in hindsight this was arguably one of the biggest overpays of a trade in the history of the NBA, with how much the Wolves had to give up in order to get Rudy Gobert, the landscape around the NBA in trading for star-level players was changing. You see, what was once thought to be unheard of in trading 5 first-round picks for an all-star level player in the NBA, unless it was one of the best players in the league, was now becoming commonplace. And it started with the trade that was made weeks prior to the Wolves trading for Gobert. And that was when the San Antonio Spurs traded their first-time all-star DeJounte Murray to the Atlanta Hawks for Danilo Gallinari and 3 future first-round picks in 2023, 25, and 27, the last 2 being unprotected picks, which I'll get back to these being unprotected, as I cannot fathom why a team would trade picks that are unprotected that far into the future. But by the Hawks making this trade and for an all-star player to add to their team, the trade market for an all-star player had changed. Doesn't matter if they were on the lower tier all-stars in the league, the trade market for a star player around the league had been set going into that offseason. If you wanted an all-star, or really I should say for a team wanting to trade an all-star, why would you settle for anything less than what the Spurs were able to acquire for DeJounte Murray, who again, a very good player, but I think we can all agree is not a top 15 or top 20 player in the NBA. You're going to tell the GM that you're looking to make a trade with, hey, if the Spurs were able to get 3 first-round picks for Murray, there is no way you're going to get anything less for my guy. That being said, though, I think most will agree that while Rudy Gobert is a great player in the NBA and a phenomenal defender, will likely go down as one of the greatest defenders in the NBA, the circumstances around his trade value should not have been as high as DeJounte Murray's, just given the fact that he's older, 30 years old, compared to Murray, who was 25 at the time and just entering his prime, and Gobert's contract. Taking on Gobert's contract should have been instantly bringing down his overall trade value that of someone like Murray, who was on a much cheaper deal. Gobert signed a max contract extension back in 2020 to the tune of 5 years, $205 million, which will pay him through 2026, at which point he'll be making $46.6 million at the age of 33. Not saying 33 is old, even by NBA standards, but it's more likely to see a player on the decline by then than still playing at their peak prime levels. But despite all of this, despite Gobert still being one of the better defenders in the NBA and having a pretty decent trade value because of his defense, the Timberwolves gave up an insane amount to get him: 4 first-round draft picks in 2023, 25, 27, and 29, the first 3 of those picks unprotected. They also sent them their first-round pick, who they just selected in the 2022 draft, in Walker Kessler. So we're basically talking about 5 first-round picks for Rudy Gobert. This is not Kevin Durant or Giannis or Steph Curry we're talking about here. It's Rudy Gobert. 5 first-round picks for him, who can't shoot beyond 10 feet. Defense is important, don't get me wrong, but in today's NBA, with such an emphasis on shooting and floor spacing, it's what makes this trade particularly egregious. And again, I'm one of the few who actually like and appreciate Rudy Gobert's game. I wanted him on my Chicago Bulls and was all but certain the Bulls were actually going to make a trade for him to improve their rim protection and interior defense to complement their perimeter defense with guys like Caruso, Lonzo Ball, if he ever plays again, and Ayo Dosunmu. But never would I have wanted Rudy Gobert for that much. Now, I mentioned unprotected picks. how I cannot fathom why any team, no matter the circumstance, would trade an unprotected pick to another team. Even if you think you're a championship contending team and the pick is going to be a late first rounder at best, you have no idea what can happen over the course of a season, or seasons in this case, since the Wolves traded multiple unprotected picks. You don't know that one of your best players or multiple players could have a season-ending injury, or even just an injury that would sideline them for a good portion of the season. You don't know if the fit of bringing in the player you're trading for is going to work until the season begins. You also have no idea 3-5 years from now what is going to be the state of the NBA in terms of competition, how your roster looks at that time, and how you stack up against said competition, and you have no idea what the future draft prospects are going to look like. The LA Lakers are paying for that now when they traded multiple unprotected picks for Anthony Davis to the Pelicans, one of which was for 2023 because the Lakers thought, hey, by getting AD, they would be title contending for the foreseeable future, and that there was going to be no way that they would find themselves in the lottery even in 2023. Until they found themselves in the lottery last season and are on track to be in the lottery yet again this season. And the 2023 draft class just so happens to be one of the most stacked draft classes in recent history, including one of the greatest prospects to enter the NBA since LeBron James himself in Victor Wembanyama. Not something the Lakers could have envisioned back in 2019 when they made the trade, thinking they might have to give up the prospect of a decade while their team has nothing to show for. Now, in the case for the Timberwolves, aside from Gobert's age and knowing they traded away picks that will likely convey after Gobert is no longer on the team and potentially retired, I'm talking about the picks in 2027 and 2029, but aside from his age and on the wrong side of 30, the Timberwolves traded 3 unprotected future first round picks, one of which we already know is in a stacked draft class in 2023, as we just talked about. And while the Wolves likely thought, well, we made the playoffs last season, we're becoming better and better with the likes of Karl Towns and Anthony Edwards getting better, especially Edwards at his young age, there was no way we could find ourselves in the lottery, right? Well, fast forward to where we are now. The Wolves are sitting 500, 9th in the Western Conference, and only a half game out of the play-in. And to make matters worse, their best player, Karl Towns, suffered a non-contact leg injury and is expected to miss a fair amount of time, 4 to 6 weeks estimated. Granted, it's early in the season, and the Wolves are going to experience some growing pains with their new roster, but there are some fundamental things wrong with this group that does not inspire a lot of confidence to have them make a deep run in the playoffs, as good as Gobert has been. And you would think, with the Wolves' strong offensive players like Karl Towns and Edwards, that he would be the perfect complement to their defensive woes that they had last season. The Wolves currently rank 20th in the league in offensive rating, 14th in the league in defensive rating, with a net rating ranked 19th. And they rank 20th in the league in terms of points allowed to their opponent. And as much as Gobert helped the Wolves and their overall rim protection from last season, Minnesota's shooting woes were not addressed in the offseason, which has been the biggest pain point in their struggles. 26th in the league in outside shooting at 32% from 3. And it doesn't help when you have a guy like Gobert who clogs up the paint and doesn't allow for better floor spacing on offense. It's why you see the Wolves getting very few wide open looks from 3, with most of their shots being contested. The other piece that has presented problems for the Wolves is while a lot of people question the fit of Karl Towns and Gobert down low, most thought they would be able to make it work with Cat, as he's better suited to be a power forward and his offense should complement Gobert's defense, right? Well, so far this simply has not been the case, as the two are both having down seasons. Karl Towns putting up near career lows in scoring and efficiency, especially shooting the ball very poorly from outside, while he shot 41% from 3 last season to this year 32%. He's also putting up career lows in blocks and steals, and his lowest box plus minus since his rookie season. Of course, you expect to see some of his numbers fall a bit, given they just added another star on their team who is going to take away some touches, and with the rise of Anthony Edwards, you're going to see his usage go down overall. But you would not expect Cat's numbers to fall off this dramatically, especially when it comes to his efficiency. And for Gobert, we've seen big drop-offs in his overall defense, put up his worst shot blocking numbers so far this season since his rookie year. His rebound numbers have also fallen off, which to an extent should be expected, given Cat will grab some of those rebounds as well, but his finishing at the rim has been especially bad. And when you look at his on-court, off-court numbers, Gobert is posting his first negative box plus minus since he was a rookie. And we're talking a significant drop off from having a box plus minus of over 4 the last 2 seasons to now being -2. And what's more shocking is that he's actually been a net negative on the defensive end, posting his worst defensive box plus minus of his career and a career worst in defensive win shares. Yes, some of this is on coaching and figuring out how to better utilize these two twin towers to their strengths, but some of it clearly is overall the fit and their ability to work together and complement each other in the front court. It is unacceptable for the Wolves, who have two of the best rebounders in the league, to be as bad as they have been in rebounding the ball, ranked 20th in the NBA. With elite level offensive players in Karl Anthony Towns and Edwards to be 20th in offensive rating, unacceptable. And to be as poor as they have been on defense, given they just added a 3-time Defensive Player of the Year winner, that is also not good. This team should be much better than what they're currently playing at, and it gets worse because thus far the Wolves have had one of the easiest schedules in the NBA, ranked 20th in strength of schedule according to basketballreference.com. Yeah, things aren't going to be getting any easier for this team, especially with Karl Anthony Towns also being out for an expected 4 to 6 weeks. Again, some things you don't anticipate to be the case when you trade multiple unprotected first-round picks, because the last thing you want is to fall into the lottery, and it just so happens to be one of those years where you get lucky in which you land the number 1 pick and you unfortunately have to ship it out to the team that it's owed to. And if this experiment continues to go south in the future, the Wolves could find themselves shipping multiple high lottery picks to the Utah Jazz with nothing to show for the future. I get that they had to do it to keep Karl Anthony Towns and Anthony Edwards happy so they don't request a trade in the future, being in a small market on an average team, but I'm not sure going all in on Rudy Gobert, of all people, and mortgaging your future was the right way to do so. Let me know what you guys think. Be sure to subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.